Dubro Suspicion Files.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are heading deep into, well, probably the most secretive landscape in the entire United States. That huge expanse of Nevada desert that is just synonymous with, dry lake beds, armed guards, warning signs, and the ultimate government mystery, Area 51.
Right.
But we aren't just going to talk about the base itself. We're zooming in, way in, on this single hyper-specific story that really defined the modern mythology of that place.
The claims of Robert Lazar.
Exactly. And his alleged workplace, the S4 facility.
That's right. Because you have to remember, before 1989, the whole legend of Area 51 was pretty vague. Blurry lights in the sky, general cover-up theories.
Right, nothing concrete.
Nothing. Lazar, he fundamentally changed all of that. He didn't just add to the myth. He provided an entire architectural blueprint for it.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, then.
It is. Our mission is defined by what we're calling the Lazar Protocol. We're going to rigorously audit his specific claims. The claims about the geography, the radical physics, the bureaucratic details, and we're going to hold them up against the verifiable historical record, hard science, and declassified intelligence.
The goal being to separate fact from fiction.
To cleanly separate the proven reality of Groom Lake, which is a very real, incredibly advanced center for terrestrial aviation, from what we're terming the simulacrum of S4.
A simulacrum, a copy without an original.
Precisely. A narrative fabrication that, and this is the paradox, proved to be an incredibly successful camouflage operation for decades.
And what makes this particular audit so timely is that dichotomy you're highlighting. Because now we have verified, documented UAP encounters.
We do.
Things like the Navy's Tic Tac videos, which are, they're extremely credible, and they genuinely challenge our understanding of physics.
Absolutely.
But the Lazar story, with its very specific requirements for, say, stable element 115, or its rigid three-tiered interior design, all those hangar descriptions, it stands as this distinct, almost perfectly designed parallel thing.
It's its own universe of claims.
Yes. So we're really investigating the origins of the modern conspiracy theory itself. We're analyzing how these narratives get constructed to be both, completely impossible and yet somehow entirely believable.
The anatomy of a modern myth.
Okay, let's unpack this by setting the stage. We need to start with the actual physical place and the historical context. The real geography of the most famous secret base in the world.
Right. So the place we all know as Area 51 is officially designated Homey Airport. Its identifier is KXTA.
Homey Airport.
Yeah, it sounds a lot less menacing, doesn't it? It's located right on the southern shore of Groom Lake, which is that huge, inhospitable, dry salt, flat out in the Nevada test and training range.
And it's important to understand why it was chosen. It wasn't picked because of some mystery or alien connection.
Not at all. It was chosen way back in 1955. The CIA picked it specifically for a project called Aquatone.
And Aquatone was the development program for the U-2 spy plane.
Exactly, the U-2 reconnaissance aircraft. The entire purpose of that program was absolute, total secrecy, which means the number one asset of that base wasn't its runway length or its facilities.
It was its profound isolation.
Profound is the right word. It's geographically protected. You've got the Emigrant Valley shielding it, and it's surrounded by these massive tracts of restricted, non-public airspace.
Which created this operational necessity for secrecy.
It did. They were developing platforms that could fly higher and see further than anything the Soviets had at the time. The classification level had to match that capability. We're talking about the highest level of information security.
Top secret sensitive compartmented information.
PSSCI, yeah. And that designation is so crucial because it preemptively explains and justifies the extreme secrecy that was already there decades before the first civilian ever reported a strange light in the sky.
So the secrecy wasn't hiding aliens, it was hiding the U-2, and then later the A-12, the SR-71.
The F-117.
Right. But this extreme, this impenetrable secrecy, this environment you called a geopolitical black hole, that's where the folklore starts to take root, isn't it?
It creates an irresistible information vacuum. The human mind, and certainly the media, will always, always rush to fill that void.
And the late 1980s was the perfect time for this.
A uniquely fertile psychological environment for Lazar's story to land in. The Cold War was, demonstrably winding down, but the military-industrial complex was still this gigantic entity.
And public trust in government was at a low point.
A historic low point. After Vietnam, Watergate, Iran-Contra, People were already primed to believe that their government wasn't just secretive for national security, but was fundamentally deceptive, capable of covering up, world-altering events.
Even extraterrestrial ones.
Especially extraterrestrial ones. It was the perfect substrate for this kind of story to grow.
Okay, so that's the context. The stage is set. So when Bob Lazar arrives on the scene, he does something really clever. He completely sidesteps all the, easily dismissible tropes of the earlier UFO contactee stories.
He does. There are no telepathic messages from Venus, no spiritual journeys to the Pleiades.
Right, none of that.
That is the real genius of the S4 simulacrum. He spoke the language of bureaucracy, which is, if you think about it, the native language of institutional deception.
He didn't talk about grand spiritual revelation.
No! He talked about non-disclosure agreements. He talked about specific color-coded security badges, the exact logistics of the bus schedule from the airport, and, the difficulty of getting a lunch break.
Right. Mundane details.
He framed his entire experience not as some kind of cosmic revelation, but simply as a highly classified yet utterly mundane job. It was a 9-to-5 position, working with reverse-engineered alien spacecraft.
It's the banality of the extraordinary. That's the hook, right?
Yeah.
That psychological hook that makes the whole mythos believable.
It's everything.
Because when he says something like, I was cleaning up radioactive debris and talking about overtime, it immediately feels more real.
Yeah.
It supersedes those older, more fantastical UFO narratives.
So precisely. His story felt real because it felt like a government job. The details were administrative and logistical, which made the unbelievable core concept alien spaceships feel grounded in this tangible administrative reality.
It's much harder to dismiss a story that correctly names the specific airline that flies workers to the base than it is to dismiss a story about psychic communication with little green men.
Exactly. He gave the conspiracy a realistic container. And that's what made it so powerful.
Okay, let's move into the anatomy of that narrative, the actual structure of his claims, starting with his recruitment. Because this is the first critical piece of scaffolding he uses to give institutional weight to his story.
Right. His pathway to S4 was allegedly paved by giants. I mean, Lazar claimed his initial entry point was a referral from Dr. Edward Teller.
Wow, Edward Teller. Revered, or I guess sometimes reviled, as the father of the hydrogen bomb.
The very same. Lazar said he met Teller while working at Los Alamos National Laboratory, LANL, which is, the crucible of America's entire nuclear weapons program.
So right from the get-go, he's attaching himself to this immense borrowed credibility.
He is. And from that alleged high-level endorsement, the logistical details start to flow. And these must have sounded incredibly authentic to people at the time.
So after Teller, what was the next step?
He claimed that following the referral, he was contacted by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the ONI.
The ONI, Naval Intelligence. That seems odd.
It does. Why naval intelligence for a landlocked Air Force/CIA operation? It's a strange detail.
It almost feels random, but I guess it adds another layer of classified complexity. It makes it sound more convoluted and therefore more real.
It could be that. It certainly complicates the audit. But regardless, he described flying from McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas.
On that commuter airline, Janet.
Right. The airline which, although it was technically classified, was kind of an open secret among locals. It had its own unmarked terminal.
So he flies to Groom Lake. But that's not where S4 was supposed to be.
No, and this is crucial. He claimed that once he landed at Groom Lake, he was transferred to a bus with blacked-out windows and then driven an additional 10 to 15 miles south.
South of Groom Lake.
To a separate hidden facility near a place called Papoose Mountain, which he designated as S4.
And the public first heard about all this, not from him directly, but through an anonymous source.
Yes. The initial appearance was in May of 1989. An investigative reporter, George Knapp, at KLAS-TV in Vegas, aired this sensational series.
With a shadowed figure.
A figure identified only as Dennis. And this Dennis claimed he was a physicist who was reverse engineering alien technology. The local reaction was intense.
And that forced him to go public.
It did. The story was so big, he felt he had to reveal his true identity a few months later.
And his stated reason for going from anonymous Dennis to named whistleblower Robert Lazar was that classic insurance policy defense.
Exactly. He claimed that after he quit the program, he was being actively intimidated. He said his phone was tapped. He was being monitored by agents.
So his logic was, by making the story public,
he would become too high profile for the government to simply silence or, disappear him. It's a very effective narrative device.
It is. It establishes this necessary conflict and immediately casts him as the righteous victim of institutional overreach, which, as you said, really resonates with that post-Watergate American psyche.
Deeply.
All right, so let's get to the machine itself. The object of his study, the craft he nicknamed the sport model, he gave incredibly specific physical attributes for this thing.
He did. He described the sport model as basically the quintessential flying saucer, a disc about 52 feet in diameter.
But what set his description apart was the detail about the metallurgy.
The metallurgy, yeah. He claimed it had a seamless metallic skin. He described it as a dark, polished stainless steel, but with absolutely no visible seams, no rivets, no welds.
Which immediately implies a technology far beyond what we could do in the 1980s.
Yeah. It forces you to accept right off the bat that this is not human manufacturing, it's something else entirely.
And the interior was just as detailed. It sounded like he was reading from an engineer's schematic.
He laid out a very clear internal blueprint, 3 levels. The lower level housed the engine specifically, 3 massive gravity amplifiers.
Okay.
The main middle level contained the reactor, the control consoles, and the seating. And he made a specific note about the seating.
Right. He said it was small and low slung.
Designed for anatomical proportions that were smaller than human.
And the upper deck.
That was dedicated to navigation or sensor arrays. But he also added these incredible sensory details.
The feel of the place.
The feel, yes. Charcoal gray walls, a pervasive, almost eerie blue lighting scheme, a faint ozone-like smell, and the very distinct architectural touch of arched doorways.
You know, that aesthetic description is something we really need to linger on for a second.
I agree.
The charcoal gray, the blue light, the smooth, sort of melted design, those arched doorways. When you look back at the science fiction movies of the 70s and 80s, these are precisely the visual cues used to signify advanced alien technology.
It's the cinematic language of sci-fi.
It is. It reminds me less of a highly functional military machine and more of the set design for, say, Close Encounters or Star Trek, the motion picture.
That's a crucial observation. It suggests a kind of cultural cross-contamination.
Where Lazar, maybe consciously or subconsciously, absorbs the popular iconography of what an alien ship should look like.
And then applies those tropes to his fictional structure, making it feel instantly recognizable to the audience as alien.
Because if this were a genuine observation of an alien craft, why would its interior design perfectly align with our, mid-century human cinematic expectations?
It's a very good question. The blue lighting and the ozone smell are great atmospheric details, but the structural elements, like those arches, they feel more like artistic choices that track with human cultural concepts of the future, not necessarily with functional engineering.
Okay, so now we transition from the psychological scaffolding to the forensic audit. This is where Lazar's very specific claims about location and technology have to stand up to measurable, verifiable reality. Let's start with the geographic anchor, the S4 facility itself.
This is probably the most easily falsifiable part of the entire claim. Lazar gave such specific details.
He did. S4 was 10 to 15 miles south of Groom Lake.
Situated near Papoose Lake, built right into the mountain ridge. He even described 9 hangar doors sloped at a sharp 60-degree angle.
Camouflaged with a spray-on, sand-like texture.
Right. I mean, if it existed, a structure like that would be unmistakable.
But when you actually cross-reference those claims with geospatial intelligence, with satellite photos, the physical reality it dissolves.
It completely vanishes. We now have access to a declassified Soviet satellite image from July 1988.
Which is remarkably the exact time frame Lazar claimed to be employed there.
The exact time. And this image shows a Papoose Lake area in high resolution. So what does it reveal about this hyper-classified mountain base housing 9 alien saucers?
Nothing.
A barren, dry lake bed. There were 0 paved roads leading to the site, 0 bus turnarounds, 0 power lines, and most importantly, 0 ventilation or utility infrastructure that would be required to support a massive subterranean facility.
And it's not just the absence of the hangars themselves, it's the absence of the support infrastructure. You can't run a facility like that without a visible logistical footprint, especially during construction.
That's the key. Excavating a mountain large enough to hold 9 52-foot flying saucers would create an immense spoil pile, a mountain of displaced rock and dirt.
Which would be visible for hundreds of miles, even if you tried to camouflage it.
And beyond that, you have to maintain air quality for personnel. You have to cool exotic equipment, supply massive amounts of power. All of that demands a visible surface presence, ventilation stacks, huge cooling towers, substation power feeds. None of this infrastructure appears on any satellite imagery of Papoose Lake then or now.
And we have to come back to the operational security aspect, too.
Yeah.
The very placement of S4, as he described it, introduces this illogical friction.
It raises a fundamental security question. Groom Lake is the most tightly controlled military real estate on the planet. Why would the Pentagon decide to place a facility that is even more sensitive? A place with alien bodies and exotic reactors.
Why put that an additional 30 minutes away over a dirt road?
Exactly. A facility with no dedicated runway of its own. This separation would necessitate daily, risky transfers of personnel, maybe exotic materials, over unsecured terrain. It introduces severe operational friction and vulnerability.
It makes no sense. High-security operations prioritize consolidation, not dispersal.
They do. The whole premise is operationally unsound.
Logistically unsound and geographically invisible. Okay, let's move from the location to the ultimate falsifiable centerpiece, the fuel source, element 115.
Right. This is the area where science really delivered the most definitive and ambiguous refutation of his claims.
So his claim was that the sport model's reactor was powered by this element 115, which was purely theoretical back in 1989.
It was. And he asserted that this material was stable, that it generated something called gravity A waves, and that the U.S. government had a stockpile of 500 pounds of it.
500 pounds, which they machined into wedges for fuel.
That was the claim, and then years later, science caught up.
Scientists actually synthesized it, and in doing so, basically blew up the entire premise.
They did. In 2003, a team of human scientists successfully synthesized element 115. It's now officially on the periodic table, named Moscovium or McMurray.
And what did we learn about its actual properties?
The scientific community immediately confirmed its nature. It is extremely unstable. The most stable isotope we've ever managed to create, Moscovium 290, has an established half-life of only about 0.65 seconds.
650 milliseconds? That's less time than it takes to blink.
It is.
So how does that reality just fundamentally contradict his story about having 500 pounds of stable material?
The contradiction is absolute. A material that decays into lighter, less useful elements in under a second cannot be machined into fuel wedges. It cannot be stored in 500-pound quantities, and it certainly can't be transported across light years from another star system.
It's not a metal, it's a signature.
It's a fleeting, highly radioactive signature created for a fraction of a second in a particle accelerator. Lazar's subsequent defense, where he claims the aliens must be using an isotope on the theoretical island of stability.
That's just moving the goalposts.
It's a classic pattern, and even if that hypothetical island exists, stability would mean a lifespan of maybe minutes or hours, not the millions of years required for an element to occur naturally, be mined, and then used as industrial fuel for interstellar travel.
So the scientific reality just completely destroys the entire mechanical premise of his propulsion system. And the physics errors, they go beyond just nuclear decay.
Yeah.
They're in the very language he used to describe how it all worked.
They absolutely are. Lazar described gravity waves being generated by the reactor and then being guided via a waveguide to the 3 gravity amplifiers on the lower deck.
Now, to a listener who doesn't have a physics background, the term waveguide sounds incredibly precise and technical. It lends immediate credibility.
And that's the brilliance of the linguistic choice. But the term waveguide is specifically borrowed from classical electromagnetism. It's real technology used in microwave engineering in radar systems to confine and direct electromagnetic energy.
Like light or radio waves.
Exactly. Applying that precise terminology to gravity waves represents a fundamental category error in physics. Gravity waves are not waves traveling through 3D space that you can channel through a metallic tube.
They're ripples in space-time itself.
They are distortions in the fabric of spacetime. The concept of channeling spacetime through a waveguide is, it's physically meaningless.
He came up with his own non-standard classification system for gravity.
That's another huge giveaway. Lazar defined 2 distinct types. Gravity A, which he claimed was related to the strong nuclear force, and gravity B, which was your normal planetary or cosmic gravity.
But in the standard model of physics,
We recognize 4 fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. There is no such distinction between different types of gravity. It's a complete fabrication. His entire physics vocabulary is just composed of real terms, correctly identified but incorrectly applied, to create a system that simply does not exist.
Okay, so if the geography of S4 doesn't exist, and the physics of element 115 is impossible, the only thing left propping up this entire narrative is the credibility of the primary witness himself. So let's conduct that forensic audit of Robert Lazar's biography. The biggest, most immediate issue is the education void.
Right. Lazar's entire professional claim, his entire reason for being listened to, is built on him being a genius-level scientist. He consistently claimed to hold 2 master's degrees.
One in physics from MIT and one in electronics from Caltech.
2 institutions that require, exceptional academic rigor and have meticulous documentation.
And when people went looking for those records,
They found nothing. Exhaustive investigations by journalists, by independent auditors, they have produced exactly 0 evidence of his attendance at either institution. No transcripts, no registration records, no thesis papers, not even a yearbook photo. It is a complete and total blank slate.
and we actually know where he was attending school during the time he claimed to be getting these advanced degrees.
Precisely. Academic records confirm that Lazar was attending Pierce Junior College in Los Angeles during this critical period.
A junior college.
And furthermore, his prior academic history, including graduating in the bottom third of his high school class, is statistically incompatible with admission to either of those highly selective graduate programs. The biography he presented to the public, the physicist background, is entirely fabricated.
This isn't just a casual omission. It's the deliberate construction of a false persona to support an even bigger lie.
It is. And it wasn't just a story he told. We have legal documents signed under penalty of perjury that completely contradict his professional claims just 2 years before he supposedly started working at S4.
Right, the bankruptcy filing.
That is the most concrete piece of forensic evidence we have. In a 1986 bankruptcy filing, a formal legal document, signed under oath, Lazar listed his occupation not as a high-level physicist with 2 master's degrees,
But as a self-employed photo processor.
a photo processor. This legal document is a snapshot of his life and career right before his alleged recruitment. It directly contradicts the timeline that he was this vetted, high-level scientist worthy of being headhunted by Edward Teller for the most secret project in human history. He was, according to the legal record, just processing photos.
So that raises a big question. If the academic and professional claims were fabricated, how did he get enough internal knowledge to anchor his story to something tangible, like his claimed employment at Los Alamos?
And that's the key. There is a small kernel of truth in there that he masterfully inflated.
Okay.
A 1982 telephone directory for Los Alamos National Laboratory does indeed list a Robert Lazar.
So he was there.
He was there, but the listing often included the code KM, which signified an association with 𝐏𝐃𝐒𝐄, a technical services subcontractor.
So he was a contractor, not a staff scientist.
Exactly. It's highly probable that Lazar worked at Los Alamos, but as an equipment technician, maybe fixing specialized gear like alpha particle probes or repairing electronics.
Which would have given him low-level clearance, but also cultural access.
Cultural access is the perfect way to put it. He would have been exposed to the aesthetics of a black project. The high security protocols, the specific security badges, the secretive language, the general atmosphere of institutional paranoia.
He learned the look and feel of a black project without ever needing to know the actual secrets.
And then he could project that authentic look and feel onto his fictional S4 narrative.
And finally, when you connect all this back to government secrecy, his legal history, and his overall character, they seem fundamentally inconsistent with a security-vetted government physicist.
For anyone to receive a TSSCI clearance, the level required for a project like this, you undergo the most meticulous background checks imaginable. Lazar's history is the antithesis of a trustworthy government agent.
He was convicted of a felony.
In 1990, right after going public, he was convicted of felony pandering. He pleaded guilty to charges related to setting up video and computer systems for a local brothel.
A conviction for a crime of moral turpitude, or any felony for that matter, is an immediate disqualifier for high-level security clearance.
Immediate and absolute. And furthermore, his later company, United Nuclear, was fined substantially in 2006 for selling restricted chemicals and components, which demonstrates this continued pattern of disregarding regulatory frameworks and ethical gray areas. This record simply does not belong to a stoic, security-vetted government scientist.
Okay, so we've established that the S4 narrative is built on geographical fiction, scientific impossibility, and a fabricated biography. But the story persists. And it persists because of those few granules of verifiable truth he wove into the fabric of the story. These are the anchors that make it all feel plausible.
These granules are essential. They're what grounds the entire impossible scenario in local reality. Let's look at the first and most famous one, the airline, Janet.
He correctly identified the private commuter airline that ferried workers from Vegas to Groom Lake.
He did. The Joint Air Network for Employee Transportation, or JANET, it operates from a private terminal at McCarran, uses unmarked Boeing 737s, often with that distinctive red stripe.
And while the existence of this airline was technically classified,
It was an open secret in the Las Vegas aviation community and among locals who lived near the airport. Identifying that airline required local observation or conversation, not a top-secret clearance.
but it was enough to make the audience think, if he knows that.
He must know everything else. It's a classic technique.
The second, and I would argue more powerful grounding detail, was that specific biometric scanner he described.
This detail convinced a lot of people that he had genuinely been inside a hyper-secret facility. Lazar described a security system that measured the length of your finger bones.
A biometric scanner that was completely unheard of by the public in 1989.
To the average listener, this sounded like future technology. Maybe even alien technology.
But the reality, as is so often the case with these black projects, was far more mundane but still classified.
It was real terrestrial technology. The device was the Idenix ID4000, a biometric hand geometry scanner. It measured the precise width and length of fingers.
And it was in use at the time.
The Department of Defense was actively using the Idenix ID4000 in secure facilities, including certain access points at Los Alamos during the late 1980s.
So his knowledge of this device proves he had access to, or at least deep exposure to, the security protocols of a secure DoD facility.
Right, likely in his capacity as a technician. It proves access to secure facility knowledge, but it decisively proves he was dealing with classified American hardware, not extraterrestrial hardware.
All of this evidence really does strongly suggest Lazar was operating within, or was maybe even a target of, a sophisticated disinformation campaign designed to protect real American technological breakthroughs.
It fits perfectly with the concept of the Mirage Men ecosystem. The U.S. military, particularly during the testing of stealth aircraft, actively used and encouraged UFO beliefs as a form of camouflage.
The logic being pretty simple.
It was. If a civilian saw a prototype F-117 flying strangely at night, the military would much rather that person report seeing a flying saucer than report the existence of a groundbreaking stealth jet. The witness gets ridiculed, the strange lights are dismissed, and the real secret remains safe.
And Lazar wasn't just some isolated figure. He was directly connected to the key architects of that whole conspiracy ecosystem, through a man named John Lear.
John Lear, yes. The son of the aviation pioneer Bill Lear. He was a central, incredibly prolific figure in promoting the darkest version of the UFO conspiracy narrative. Massive underground bases, treaties with the Greys, secret wars.
And Lear was promoting these ideas well before Lazar came forward.
He was. The two were friends. Lazar had extensive access to Lear's documents, his theories, and what's crucial is that many of the specific elements Lazar reported about S4, the description of the gray aliens, the nature of the conflict, they mirrored the narratives Lear was already promoting.
So Lazar might have just been a vector.
He may have been a vector, intentionally or not, to take these already circulating rumors and solidify them with his pseudo-bureaucratic details, thereby drawing all the attention away from the real secrets.
Let's focus on the biggest secret of that era then, the F-117 Nighthawk connection. Because this really feels like the linchpin of the terrestrial explanation for the sport model's bizarre flight characteristics.
It absolutely is. The F-117 Nighthawk, developed under the codename Have Blue, was flying extensively out of Groom Lake and the nearby Tonopah test range during the precise time frame of Lazar's alleged employment.
And these flights were almost always at night.
To maintain secrecy, yes, which made the aircraft highly susceptible to misidentification.
So visually, what made the F-117 so easy to mistake for something otherworldly?
Its design was just revolutionary and visually baffling. It was faceted, all sharp angles, painted matte black. It looked completely unlike any conventional plane, like a geometrical aberration flying through the sky.
At night, with just its lights visible, its profile would be totally ambiguous.
Completely. Witnesses could easily see lights moving in impossible patterns and conclude logically from their perspective, that it wasn't a human plane.
But the connection goes deeper than just its looks. It's the inherent instability of the F-117 that directly mirrors Lazar's description of the alien craft.
This is the most compelling parallel of all. The F-117 was inherently aerodynamically unstable. That faceted design, which was necessary for radar invisibility, made it incredibly difficult to fly. It was constantly trying to fall out of the sky.
And to compensate for that,
It required a complex, redundant, fly-by-wire computer system that was making thousands of micro-adjustments every single second, just to keep it airborne and stable.
So Lazar's description of the alien sport model needing constant computer correction and fine-tuning to achieve stable flight, that actually mirrors the exact operational reality of the classified American stealth jet flying out of Groom Lake at that time.
It's a near-perfect translation. Lazar may have witnessed test flights or heard descriptions of its required computer stabilization and interpreted these very real, bleeding-edge human flight characteristics as evidence of extraterrestrial propulsion, something that needed a computer because it was defying our laws of aerodynamics.
He didn't see magic.
He saw classified human genius, misunderstood it, and then retrofitted it into an alien narrative.
We've established that the S4 narrative is fiction, but it had this immense power. It generated massive cultural capital. It literally transformed the surrounding Nevada desert.
It did. The story created instant iconography. Lazar directed witnesses to a specific vantage point on Highway 375, marked by a rancher's mailbox.
The black mailbox.
The black mailbox. It became ground zero for UFO tourism and pilgrimage for years.
It was an immediate cultural phenomenon.
People traveled from all over the world to stake out that spot, hoping to catch a glimpse of the test flights that Lazar had described. And the cultural impact was so pervasive that in 1996, the state of Nevada officially renamed Highway 375.
The extraterrestrial highway.
The extraterrestrial highway. Directly capitalizing on the tourism and the mythology generated almost entirely by the Lazar story.
And 30 years after that, that same cultural mythos led directly to one of the most absurd and massive viral events in recent history, the 2019 Storm Area 51 phenomenon.
That event was the perfect synthesis of the absurdity of the mythos with this deep-seated, genuine public desire for disclosure and anti-authority sentiment.
Started as a joke on Facebook.
A joke by Maddie Roberts with the slogan, "They can't stop all of us," and it just captured the global imagination. And while only a small fraction of the millions who RSVP'd actually showed up.
The scale was still large enough to force the U.S. Air Force to issue stern official warnings.
Which, of course, only served to further cement the base's legendary forbidden status in popular culture. It just showed how enduring the cultural footprint Lazar left behind truly was.
So how does Lazar's story stack up against this new disclosure era, where we have former military personnel now testifying about crash retrievals under oath? Let's compare the sport model to the verified UAP encounters, like the Tic Tac.
The comparison is essential. The verified Tic Tac video, confirmed by the Navy, showed objects capable of flight that defies conventional aerodynamics. Instantaneous acceleration, apparent transmedium capability.
The thematic similarity is there. Advanced, non-conventional propulsion is a real thing the defense apparatus is dealing with.
It's undeniable, but the divergence in the specifics, and more importantly in witness credibility, is vast.
Vast.
Crucially, the Tic Tac did not display the specific 3 gravitational amplifier arrangement or the belly-up interstellar flight mode that Lazar described. And moreover, the credibility of the primary witnesses in the Tic Tac case, highly decorated Navy officers and pilots like Commander David Fravor, it stands in stark and total contrast to Lazar's history of felony pandering, fabricated credentials, and bankruptcy fraud.
The modern evidence suggests something highly advanced is real, but it doesn't validate Lazar's specific, scientifically flawed story.
Not in any way. And the conversation has been pushed even further now by testimony from the former intelligence officer David Grush.
Grush testified under oath about a multi-decade crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, and even mentioned recovering non-human biologics.
Which deeply validates the overarching concept of a black program secretly handling retrieve technology. That's the cultural landscape Lazar helped create.
We also have documents like the alleged Admiral Wilson memo.
The Wilson-Davis memo, yeah. Though it's heavily debated, it details a supposed conversation where a high-level military leader struggled to gain access to a reverse engineering program, which was possibly housed within a private aerospace contractor.
So what's the synthesis here?
The synthesis is subtle but profound. Grush's claims and the supporting documents, they validate the existence of a real deep black reverse engineering effort, likely housed at secure, specialized contractor facilities. But these new revelations provide zero corroboration for Lazar's specific S4 geography near Papoose Lake or his flawed element 115 physics.
So the most generous interpretation, then, is that Lazar wasn't a whistleblower who revealed the secret, but was more of a rumor mill who absorbed the authentic paranoia and secrecy surrounding actual black projects.
And then retrofitted it into a dramatic, fictional autobiography. That is the most logical conclusion given the forensic evidence. Lazar, through his technician work at L&L and his connections with figures like John Lear, was exposed to the culture and low-level details of genuine black programs.
Programs that may very well be engaged in reverse engineering.
Possibly, and he then synthesized those rumors and details, the Janet flight, the Identic scanner, the existence of black budgets, into his own detailed narrative to achieve a level of fame and notoriety that his actual academic background could never have afforded him.
He created a detailed lie that accidentally pointed toward a much deeper hidden truth.
Precisely.
So to wrap this all up then.
To reiterate our findings from the Lazar protocol, the physical base, Area 51, is real. Its secrecy was and remains absolutely critical to U.S. national security for developing terrestrial platforms like the U-2 and the F-117. The secrecy is justified by advanced aviation.
But the specifics of the Lazar story.
The specific claims of Bob Lazar, the location of S4, the existence of stable element 115, his academic credentials, they collapse completely under scientific and forensic scrutiny. The geography is fabricated, the physics is impossible, and the biography is fraudulent.
Yet, even though he was a fabulist, his story was profoundly effective. It gave the public the precise vocabulary they needed, sport model, element 115, the extraterrestrial highway, to articulate the suspicion they already held.
Which was?
That the government was indeed hiding revolutionary, unbelievable technology in the Nevada desert. His narrative fulfilled a vital cultural and sociological need right at a moment of deep public cynicism.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought that we have to leave you with. Lazar's core lie was not that there were secrets in the desert. His lie was that he personally held the keys to those secrets. So, if the modern disclosure era, which is validated by the testimonies of Commander Fravor, David Grush, and the established existence of UAPs operating outside of known human capability, if this era confirms the existence of deep black crash retrieval or reverse engineering programs, does that simply confirm that the disinformation strategy that used Lazar as a vector was not a failure, but a remarkable success?
Wow.
If the public has spent 30 years fixated on an empty, barren lake bed at Papoose Lake and debunking unstable element 115, where might the real S4 be? And how effectively has the Lazar simulacrum protected that true classified location for the last 3 decades?